Hey guys, it's Lachelle. I'm one of the advocates here at the Avalon Center, and I wanted to talk to y'all today about the red flags of an abusive relationship. Domestic violence comes in a lot of different forms and a lot of different shapes and looks quite different in most situations. But one thing that is pretty common among abusive relationships is that in the beginning they can seem perfectly normal and healthy. And so when we talk about red flags, what that means is kind of like a warning sign or one of those things that, if you notice this, you might want to stop and pay attention or consider the situation or look deeper into it. One thing to remember is that abusers will, in the beginning of a relationship, actually go overboard trying to be charming and trying to romance or woo the person that they're dating into letting down their guard. And obviously, if I'm dating someone and they're extremely charming and really good to me in the beginning, it's going to be easier for me to let that guard down and to become more vulnerable to that person. Once you become vulnerable to that person is when they start to exert forms of power and control over you and kind of work on getting rid of those personal boundaries or, crossing some lines with you just to see how far they can go. And quite often, this doesn't happen in a very obvious way. It tends to be pretty subtle. And so, what we see is that victims get into these situations and it happens so subtly that they don't notice it. And by the time they do notice it, it's harder to get out of it because that person now controls pretty much every aspect of their life, from their finances to their support group to their mental health to their children, all those different things. And so early recognition of these warning signs is really key because it can help a person to be able to get out of that situation prior to that abuser gaining so much power and control. And so the less power and the less control they have when you recognize it, the easier it is to back away or to get out of it. So one of the things is that if you're dating someone and it's early on and that person wants to move too quickly, you go on a date with them and all of a sudden they're ready to get married or move in together. This can definitely be a red flag that something's not right in this situation. And the reason that is because if you're really in looking for a healthy situation and you're not preying on somebody to try to make them your victim, you're probably going to want to take time to get to know that person and to kind of feel things out so that you know them better before you try to move in or rush into marriage. Another one is if this person or the person you're dating flatters you constantly. We all like to get compliments. It's nice to be complimented and for somebody to say good things to you. However, if you notice that the amount of compliments and the amount of flattering seems almost too good to be true, a lot of times it really is too good to be true. And the reason that abusers will use that tactic again is just to make you more vulnerable and more open to them. And to make them to build you up so that they can make you feel like this is the best relationship you've ever had. And keep in mind, this also makes a victim, once things turn bad and start to get aggressive and ugly, it makes a victim know, like, hey, there were good parts to this relationship and it was good in the beginning. I can get it back there. Maybe I did something to make this bad. And so that kind of goes along with that. If the person that you're in a relationship with wants you to themselves all the time, maybe they insist that you don't go out with your friends or that you don't call your mom every day or that you quit your job or even that you might stop going to some activities or hobbies that you used to enjoy. So what this means is that person is slowly trying to isolate you. And so through that process of isolation, what they're doing is they're trying to push you away from your family and your friends, and they're trying to make it to where they have you all to themselves and you have nowhere else to turn but to them. And in the beginning, this can happen very subtly. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're telling you you can't call your mom or you can't go hang out with your friends. It often looks more like, well, I really wish you would have spent the night with me and not spent the night hanging out with your friends. I missed you real bad. I really wanted to spend that time with you. Or, Get off the phone with your mom and talk to me. You always talk to her about stuff and you don't talk to me about it, kind of making you feel guilty for spending that time with people. And it can even sometimes look like not necessarily that they say anything. Maybe if you go and spend a night out with your friends, they're just short with you and distant from you for a little while after that. So it's almost like you're getting a consequence for spending time with that social group. If they insist that you if they insist that you stop doing current activities and stuff that you normally would do, that's them also another way of kind of trying to get rid of that support group or anything positive that you have going on in your life. Again, keep in mind from an abuser standpoint, if you have a good support system and a lot of people to turn to, then that makes it like they have to work harder to keep that control over you. And it makes it easier for a person to leave if they have good support. If that person does not honor your boundaries, if you've set a personal boundary, like, for example, I don't want you to stay all night at my house. We both have our own separate places, and I don't want you to spend the night with me at this point. And that person is constantly like trying to get you to let them spend the night at your house, or trying to get you to let them move in, whatever that looks like. If they're pushing back on any of your wishes or anything that you personally have set forth to them, then that's a good time to kind of evaluate that situation and think about, why are they pushing so hard for this? If they want to know where you're at all the time, this is one of those things too where I've heard clients say, well, I just thought in the beginning when he was constantly calling and texting me that was attention and that he just really was worried about me and concerned about me. And a lot of times abusers will use that to say, well, I was just so worried. I called you 15 times while you were out at the movie with your mom, but it was because I was worried. I got scared. It was raining. When really that's not the case at all. They're just making sure that you are where you are supposed to be. And they're also trying to make it so that you may not want to go to the movies again with your mom because it's embarrassing that your boyfriend's calling you 15 to 20 times during the movie. It's not necessarily, it's not a good thing when somebody wants that much control and wants to know every movement that you're making nonstop. That can also look like if you have a job and they're constantly coming by your work or calling you at work or asking where you're at, or maybe they even want you to turn location services on your phone so that they can prove that you're at work or wherever you're supposed to be. That's not healthy. That is definitely a sign of something that could become abusive or may already be abusive. If they criticize you or put you down, one tactic that abusers use is, I want to make you feel bad about yourself. If I can make you feel like you are unworthy or unlovable, then you're going to think that you have to stay with me because maybe you'll think I'm the only person that's gonna be with you or that wants to be with you. And so that can come across in a lot of ways too that aren't always so forward and obvious. Maybe making comments about weight gain, or maybe making comments making fun of you about the way that you talk, or just different things like that. If this person takes no responsibility for their personal actions at all, for example, you might hear them say things like they're constantly accusing others of situations that have went wrong in the past. So maybe there's a friend that they're no longer friends with and they place all the blame for that situation on that friend, or an ex-girlfriend or an ex-boyfriend that it ended badly and they try to make that person out to be a monster. A lot of times not taking any personal responsibility for their part of that failed relationship is a red flag of abusive traits. And another example of that would be, say you guys have your first argument and you very well going into that argument felt like you had a valid point, but by the time it's over with, this person's flipped that script on you and made you feel like it was all your fault, or that they tried to place all the blame on you. That's definitely a red flag for an abusive situation. If they have a history of abusing others, abusers often don't stop abuse just because one relationship ends and another one begins. If you hear people say, hey, he used to beat his ex-girlfriend, or she was abusive to her ex-boyfriend, or she stalked him, believe them and at least keep it in the back of your mind that this is something that could potentially happen to me, so that you can watch for these red flags and know that if multiple of them start happening, that, hey, I may need to reach out for help. I mean, obviously, you can't always believe everything that people tell you, but it's good to keep that stuff kind of tucked into the back of your mind and don't ignore it if you know that that person's been abusive before. If they take your money or run up your credit card debt, if you notice that that person's starting more and more to make you pay for things or to take your paycheck when you get paid and run through it, then that's definitely a red sign that they are, or a red flag that they are abusing you. Financial abuse is one of those things that we could talk about for hours itself just because it's so prevalent in domestic violence. And again, if I can keep you from having any kind of financial independence, then where are you going to go if I start to get abusive towards you? If they rage out of control around you, but then seem like they can hold their composure around other people. So, for example, like we were talking about getting into an argument, if they get so rageful with you that they just lose control and yell and scream and throw things, but then around other people they don't behave that way, that's definitely a sign and a red flag to watch for, because that means that they are choosing to behave that way around you. If I can control my temper at work, or I can control it around the family, or I can control it around our friends. But when I'm around you, I'll lose my temper and can't control it all of a sudden. That's definitely a sign that that's a chosen behavior and not that the person just can't control their temper. Um, and out of all these red flags, when you're looking at them, quite often an abuser is not just going to have one of these traits. Quite often, you're going to see that a little bit of all of these are probably present in some form or fashion. And they don't all have to be present for you to be in an abusive relationship. Not every abuser is financially abusive. Not every abuser criticizes their victim. There's just a lot of ways that that can differ. So keep in mind that not all of these have to be present for there to be an abusive situation happening. And abuse is never the fault of the victim. It's really important to know that if you're a victim of an abusive situation, it's not your fault. Abusers are very manipulative and very slick, and they know how to get you into a situation where you're completely vulnerable to them and take advantage of that. And I just encourage you that if you feel like you are recognizing any of these signs in your relationship, that maybe do some research or consider what kind of situation you're in. There is help for these things. There's resources available for you. There's advocates here that are willing to help you 24/7, and we want to help you. We want to help people learn about domestic violence and learn about the options that they have if they're in the middle of domestic violence. And if you know someone that you think is being abused, be non-judgmental and as supportive as you possibly can. If you find that you are experiencing a lot of these red flags and you want to talk to an advocate, please just give us a call on our crisis line. It's 1-800-641-3434, or you can reach out to us on Facebook or comment on this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope that it brought you guys some education around those red flags of abuse. Have a great day, and thank you.